Hello everyone, this is Kathryn Brooks here. I'm the CEO of She's Her Own CEO in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm here today with Theresa Payton, who's the CEO of Fortalice Solutions. And we're here on site in Charlotte, North Carolina. Theresa, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for being here today.
So Theresa and I met back in January in Atlanta at the Mercer Executive Forum, which is sponsored by BB&T. And I think she was actually scheduled to present last fall, and there was a hurricane, I think, that came through Atlanta.
Yes, it got rescheduled.
So when she did come in January, I was just very impressed with her background, her resume. She is the first female Chief Information Officer in the White House, and also a University of Virginia graduate, and also the CEO and woman-owned business CEO of Fortalice. So can you just share some of your background with the viewers?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everybody. I hope you're having a great week so far, and we're excited because actually the sun is shining for the first time in like 5 days,
Yes.
and so really exciting. But yeah, so just a little bit about my background. I went to 9 schools between kindergarten and 12th grade, and that's not because I was a juvenile delinquent. I'm a daughter of a Marine and moved around, and then I married my husband, who was in the Navy for a while there, and we're excited to have Charlotte be our home. I have one sister, younger sister. I've got 3 kids. I also have 2 rescue Great Pyrenees. And from just a work background standpoint, my undergraduate degree is from Immaculata University, which was an all-women's Catholic university at the time. It's co-ed. And because I wanted to be employable, I had a double major, and I got certified in something, and it can be done in 4 years. So my first major is economics, my second is business administration, and then I went for certification in computers while I was there. Then I got the opportunity to go to University of Virginia, and I have a Master of Science in Management Information Systems. And if you asked me when I was coming out of UVA, what would you be doing? I told everybody I talked to, I'm going to change the world with artificial intelligence. And so I feel like I'm changing the world. I'm not programming anymore in artificial intelligence, but just kind of one thing led to another. When you're on that cutting edge of technology, you're also on the cutting edge of, we didn't call it cybercrime back then, we called it fraud. Right. And sort of cybercrime and money launderers and terrorist financing, and I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that our customers using new technology that in between us and them would be bad guys. Right. And so that's kind of where I got my start in cybersecurity.
Theresa, there's so much there. Your faith, your background, your travels, your public speaking career, your authorship. How many books have you written now? Where to start? But can we just start with kind of the STEM concept?
Sure.
And I know that's a relatively new term. Did you always want to be kind of in the technology space?
I did, and so growing up, one of the things that inspired me was NASA, and so I thought, well, maybe I'll be like the first female astronaut or something like that. I got beat to the punch on that, but which is wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful. Yeah. And what's interesting is, when I got to Quantico High School, which is a military Department of Defense school for high school, they actually made it mandatory to do computer programming. Wow. And I would love to see high schools do that, because you're in this safe environment, and it was also mandatory to take a typing class as well, which has served me well, writing papers and writing books, to be able to keyboard and type. But I think that really kind of just started my interest, really. I always liked science, technology. I always loved math. I wasn't sure I wanted to be, quote, an engineer, but once I started taking programming classes in high school, I thought, oh, this is fun. I like this.
How were you, so you went to an all-girls school, right, at one point. Once you got into your master's programs and like in your later career, did you find yourself being the only female in the room? And if so, how did that play, or what were some of the dynamic elements?
That's a great point. I hadn't really thought about it that way, that there I was at this all-women's Catholic university, which is, like I said, now co-ed, and then I get into the master's program. There weren't a lot of women. University of Virginia actually came recruiting for me, because they wanted women in the program, and women hadn't applied at the point when they called me. But they did manage, through recruiting and getting the word out, to get women in the program, and we had some. We didn't have a lot. And same thing when I got to Barnett Bank. I remember one of the groups of developers said to me, "Do you know how to code?" And I was like, well, yeah, I know how to
Well,
code.
yeah.
And they're
Who
like, oh,
doesn't?
we've never met a girl programmer before. I'm like, okay, so, but I worked for a female, and she was
Right.
very encouraging and mentoring of me, and we're still really good friends today.
Wow. So you've always had kind of a predisposition toward technology and math and science. So it was something that you felt in some capacity you would be serving in that way in your professional career.
Definitely.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because it's gotten a lot better. But I still have times where I'm the only woman in the room.
Right.
And like even running a cybersecurity intelligence operations company, there's more women in cybersecurity and intel, but I haven't met another female CEO who's
Right.
come up through. I was a developer, and has come up through sort of the technical ranks.
Right.
That's
Right.
trying to do something like this.
So you're managing with Fortalice. You're not only the CEO, so you're managing the strategy, the kind of the corporate direction, the public relations, so to speak. You're kind of overseeing all of that, but you also have the technical capability to be able to direct your team and ensure that the product is of a quality level.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't get to be as technical as I used to. And every once in a while, like last year, I took an online programming course in Python, and the team was like, why are you doing that?" And I'm like, well, I just want to keep my edge, right? Not to try and get at the keyboard and get in your way, but yeah, it's one of those things. I'm really blessed to have incredibly gifted technical people working on the team, male and female. Some of the numbers, they say that in cybersecurity it's around 11%. Some of the numbers are starting to say maybe it's closer to 15 to 20. And I'm really proud to say we actually have 40% female at the company.
Wow. That's amazing, and that's a lot due to you, of course. So for people looking to get into cybersecurity right now, what would you recommend? Is it kind of following your path? Or do you think like a liberal arts background can somehow translate into getting into cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'd encourage even people who are watching this that are already working, you can do a career change. And some of my best cybersecurity analysts, it's actually a second career for them, which is phenomenal. And so what I would say, a couple of things. First of all, it's hard to get to these security conferences. They're expensive. It's hard to get the time away. But after they're over, they post everybody's speeches online.
Wow.
And so what you can do is you can, for free, go to Black Hat, go to RSA, go to DEF CON, and look at these speakers had to compete for those speaking slots.
Right.
Go watch, and you can watch the technical ones, the policy ones, and that'll give you a good feel for what interests you, and what kind of moves you, and then that can kind of help direct if you feel like you need to go to school. There's a lot of also really good online training, so you don't necessarily have to get a degree in it. You could get a certification in it. There's a lot of really great certification programs, and you don't have to be technical to be in cybersecurity either. You could be thinking about, we need people who have business analytical skills, who have risk skills, people who can write. So if you're technically minded, but you prefer to write, we need people who can actually explain to businesses, we found something wrong, here's what you need to do to change it.
Right. And I love everything you just said, because I get a lot of comments through the She's Her Own CEO platform about, how do I get started, either as a CEO or as a technology leader. And one of my big recommendations, and I think you would agree, is that you really need to look at people that have come before you. And Theresa's a great example of that, and watching other people's speeches and trying to understand, yes, you need to carve your own path, but why not look at somebody that's already successful and role model, after them. So that's really fascinating. Can you talk about your book writing and your speaking engagements?
Sure.
And how that kind of evolved coming out of UVA, and we haven't even talked about the White House yet. So.
Well, it's funny. I spent most of my career, I always say, I started out in the server room, and then I sort of made my way to making presentations in the boardroom, working at financial services. But most of my career, really, you didn't talk to media. You stayed out of the limelight. Usually if the media was talking to you, it's because something bad happened. And I really kind of stayed in the background. Same thing at my time at the White House. But then coming out of my time at the White House, when I realized that security was broken, that we weren't really doing security the right way, we were relying too much on the human, like, remember, don't click on links or open attachments, and that's just not really a winning strategy. I realized that I was going to have to get the word out. And so I'm really blessed that I have the opportunity through the Speakers Bureau for people to find me and for me to be able to connect with people. And I have to tell you, the majority of my business clients I've met through a speaking event, which is amazing. It's such a blessing.
That's amazing. And your social media presence is very inspiring, and the way you curate kind of the current news with your own thoughts, with your TV appearances and speaking engagements, I think it's just a treasure trove of information. So where are you on Twitter? We'll just put that.
Oh, sure. So we have a company account, Fortalice LLC, which I've got this phenomenal team who, by day, they're thinking about cybersecurity challenges. But in addition to that, they manage all the social media now. That I used to manage those accounts, but now I've got really talented people. But my account is Theresa Payton on Twitter. We've got an Instagram account, Fortalice Solutions, and we're also on Facebook and LinkedIn.
And we'll post all those links once this video goes live, and we'll put this on YouTube as well.
Perfect.
So let's talk about the White House a little bit, if you have a few minutes to talk about that. So how, coming out of the banking industry, is that kind of what the prelude to getting into the White House was?
It's funny. It was one of those phone calls I almost didn't return.
Oh my gosh.
So I thought I was being socially engineered. I was back from maternity leave way too soon with my second. I've got 3. And one of the assistants said, the White House called for you. And I said, the clothing company or the apple juice company? And she said, no, the one in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I said, am I in trouble? And she said, no, President George W. Bush needs a new chief information officer. And I said, I don't, it's a scam. I don't know anybody there.
Phishing.
Yeah, and I said, they're socially engineering me. But she made me call back, and I'm so glad I did. And it's funny you say that, because I actually said to the Director of Office of Administration at the White House, why would I be qualified? I'm like, I've never worked, I'm not like a political appointee person. I've never worked at the White House. I did an internship in graduate school for the United States General Accounting Office, but I really don't understand government. And he said, look, banking, you have to keep the bad guys out. It's 24/7 on call. Customers have to be happy with the technology you build. And he said, heavily regulated environment. I think you're going to be surprised how much is transferable, and what you don't know, we can teach you. That was really cool.
And you were there how long?
2.5 years. So I was there 2006 to 2008.
So CIOs cycle through pretty quickly. I know that from kind of coming from the Fortune 500 world, but that's a long run.
That's actually the longest tenure they ever had. Wow. So not only the first female, but most of the CIOs before me lasted 12 to 13 months.
Wow. And what was like a typical day for you being in Washington, D.C.? Were you still in Charlotte? Were you commuting?
I commuted on the weekend back up to D.C. Sometimes my husband and my small kids would come up instead, and we'd enjoy the White House in D.C. So I would commute on Sunday night, and then I would be there Monday through Friday. I'd commute back fairly early on Friday so that I knew I'd be home for the weekend, and then I would sort of wrap up the week from Charlotte on Fridays when I could. I mean, there were times sometimes I couldn't make it home, but I'd get up around 3 a.m. So the night before, I would put everything at the front door. We had a 24-hour Secret Service gym. So I'd get up at 3 a.m. I would grab my gym bag, grab my work clothes, go to the gym, work out. And my goal was to be at my desk, talking to my husband and the kids before they went off to preschool and work, saying my prayers, and then ready as soon as the president's 6:15 a.m. briefing was done. Because if I was not ready for my day, once that briefing happened, it was like the ops tempo for the day, and my day would be running me instead of me running my day. And I've always been a morning person, or as my team says, an all-around the day person. But yeah, and then I would try to finish up by 10. There were some nights I'd be there until 11, and then I'd just start the cycle again, and I'd use the weekends really to hang out with the family and recharge.
Have you seen that position evolve, like from when you entered it and kind of, over the last several years and the topics that are being addressed?
It has. I mean, there's certain things that stay the same. The president, the vice president, and the 3,000 staff that serve the executive office of the president, they travel all the time. And the goal of the CIO, besides keeping everything safe, is no matter where the employees are, you have to make sure you extend it as if they're sitting at their desk at the White House. So no matter where they are in the world, no matter how dangerous it is from a intercepting communications and technology perspective and who's targeting our networks, you have to make it as if they were back at their desk. And I took a lot of pride in the fact that while I was there, thankfully, we didn't have any data breaches, and we were able to do that.
And then you're managing mobile devices and kind of all that protocol.
Yeah, and so, social media was important while we were there, but it was still in its infancy.
Right.
So we had the mobile, but at that point in time, we'd standardized on BlackBerry. So we were not allowing you to use a Droid or an iPhone at that time. And really, BlackBerry was the superior platform from a security standpoint. We weren't really allowing tablets. We had standard issue equipment. And it's funny, I was just there a couple nights ago for a meeting, and they do make everybody lock up. If you do not have a White House issued device, they make you lock it up in a locker before you head on into the White House, which is a really, really smart move. We didn't have to worry. I mean, we would tell people you can't bring your personal stuff in, but I had to lock up my work laptop and everything because it wasn't White House issued.
Right. So that protocol is probably even more so today,
even more so important. But it's interesting. We're more vocal about the threats, but the threats that you hear about today from nation state sponsored, North Korea, Russia, Iran, China, those were all there. We just weren't talking about them as much.
Right. Because I know you've seen, obviously there's websites out there that show all the attacks, pings coming in, and it's nonstop. It's almost like a flight map, all the airplanes in the sky. It's like that's how many attacks are going on or attempted. So anything topical that you would like to address as far as like what's going on with LifeLock or, kind of
No, that's a good one. And I'll go back to the book because I realized I didn't answer you on the book. So I'm really fortunate that the first two books, there's the newest edition of Protecting Your Internet Identity, Are You Naked Online? And funny story, I'm Catholic, and my priest was going over to Rome to meet with the Pope, and he said, Theresa, I need you to autograph a copy to the Pope.
Oh my gosh.
And then I realized that my book says, Are You Naked Online? But anyways, good Catholic girl. Anyways, but what's great is if you've always wanted to write a book and you haven't done one yet, I highly recommend finding somebody you know and trust to be a co-collaborator. So both books I wrote with a privacy lawyer, Ted Claypool. And what's great is there's accountability there.
Right.
So we would evenly divide up the chapters. So I'd say, I'll take these 5 chapters, you take these 5 chapters. We also have a book coach. So the book coach is brutally honest. So she'd get my chapter and she'd say, I fell asleep 2 pages in. This was awful. But here's my recommendations for how you can perk it up. And that book coach will really help you. And just like people get life coaches and fitness coaches and workplace coaches, get a book coach. So if you haven't written one before, try to write one with a co-author. Divvy up the work 50-50, and then get a really good book coach / book editor.
That's great
advice.
We've got
this one. We've got Privacy in the Age of Big Data. This is a whole brand new version of the first book. And I'm in the process of working on 2 different book projects right now, but they haven't been approved. So fingers crossed. Next time we talk, maybe they'll be approved.
Awesome. I'm in the process of a book right now.
Oh, good for you.
So I may come back to you on that. But that was excellent advice. Excellent advice about the coach and the peer review. That's another aspect. So your talents, I'm sure, counterbalance and or complement your co-author. So how has the book? Because I know when you give a speech, you do call this out and you reward the person that asked the first question with the book. So how important do you think this is in tying it with your business and just kind of your objectives for your professional career?
Yeah, I mean, the books are another way to evangelize on, to let people know we are thought leaders here at Fortalice, and that we think about, just like at the White House, if you think of white glove service at the White House, you don't just take care of the president and the mission, but you take care of him as a person, making sure his cyber footprint is protected and that he can do the work that he needs to do. And that's kind of our philosophy here. And so what the books allow me to do is maybe reach people that I might not ever get a chance to give a speech to, or reach people in a different way. And I try to do it on more the personal level, so people have something for their kids or their grandparents or their friends and family.
Right, so they can take this back with them and kind of tie it into what's going on in current events, and is that the readership or the kind of the audience you were writing for, somebody to, what else about, let's talk about leadership, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I've worked on the phone and via email remotely with members of your team, and they all adore you. And they think you are an outstanding leader, you are calm, collected, you kind of have that emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. So can you talk a little bit about your leadership style? And I'll just add one other thing. had done a written interview with me earlier in the year. So go to she'sherownCEO.com, and if you go in the blog section, go back to I think early February, and Theresa has a whole nother interview on there, which is outstanding. But you talked about servant leadership too. So
Yes.
I'll just leave that as an open question, how you want to.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, servant leadership. Obviously, it's kind of putting other people first, and it doesn't mean be a doormat, but it means be putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and
Right.
to really be thinking about what they want. And actually, my parents, I consider them servant leaders,
Right.
and they've really kind of been my heroes and sort of the people I emulate. I'm a faith-based person. We actually have a corporate chaplain for all of the
Wow.
employees, and the corporate chaplain is both a workplace coach.
Wow.
And then if the employee asks for faith-based coaching or for prayer, then they'll engage in prayer, but they don't have to. But they can just use him as a workplace coach, and he ministers to the needs of them and anyone that matters to them. And that really helps keep me grounded in what matters in my leadership style. Now, I will tell you, I can be tough. So I have a nickname from the White House days that the team still uses for me, and it's the Velvet Hammer. And sometimes they'll talk about how, I got the hammer without the velvet today. So, sometimes that tough love and just being honest and candid at the moment and telling people, look, I care about you and I care about your professional development or your personal development. I'm noticing these are areas that you need to work on, or I'm, having those words, I'm disappointed. It's not easy to deliver, but if you do it in the spirit of kind of love and servant leadership so that
Right.
person can grow and do better, nobody wants to do a bad job. Everybody wants to do a great job. And so finding kind of those right opportunities to help stretch people and help them grow, give them that feedback. But I really do base it all on sort of what would I want for them and what's going to be best for them and what's going to be best for the client. And I really do. I talk to my corporate chaplain once a week, no matter what's going on in the world. He and I always talk voice to voice. He does site visits, so he goes and visits the employees in DC, and then he does video calls with the remote employees and the Charlotte employees. And then he and I text if I need a little bit of extra guidance. I've also recently made the decision to have an executive coach. I never had one before, but as the company's growing, I spent my whole career within a corporate infrastructure and the government, and running a company is different. And it requires a different leadership style. And we've grown so much now, I don't do the work as much anymore. And I have to trust but verify. My work is different. And the type of leader I need to be for my team is different. And so I've actually taken on an executive coach, and there's a level of accountability there. And she's really helping me think through the things about me that the team wants me to continue doing, and then the things that the only way for this company to grow and be an exceptional place to work with an exceptional team is I'm going to have to change how I approach things.
How does a global team factor into that? And where are they located? How many versus here in Charlotte?
Yeah, sure. So the majority of our staff is in Washington, D.C., but we do have remote employees. We have a couple resources in kind of the Manchester, UK area, but the bulk are United States, Washington, D.C., and Charlotte, and then we have people in Maine and Wisconsin, in Tennessee, all different parts of the country. And so we've got a philosophy, and our first philosophy is in person is number one, always the best. Second best, video conferencing or something like this, right? And so we have Zoom, and even if you're in your car, we tell you put it on Zoom and put it up here. Don't look at the screen, but even if I'm looking at your chin while you're driving, I'd like to see you and see your reaction.
Right.
Third best, a phone call. Last, digital messaging and communications, because so much is lost. Feeling and tone and context and what you really meant can really be lost in writing.
Do you find that you manage your remote employees on a different level because you're not seeing them in person as much, or you're using the same approach, or is that something you have to work through?
Yeah, so what I have instituted, I have something I do called skip levels. And so my skip levels, and I've told the managers, I'm not going around you, but my skip levels, I make a commitment. I do about 4 skip levels a month, where I do a video conference for 30 minutes, and I tell the employee there's no agenda. And so the agenda could be, if you want to talk to me about your kids and your dogs, and your gerbil and the last picnic you went on, that's great. Or you want to talk to me about a race you're getting ready for. So just to kind of recreate that water cooler talk, or that coffee talk, so that for those people who, and then we do make an effort to try and bring the team in to like DC, and we'll all go into DC and spend some time together.
Right. Do you do a lot of client visits as well in your crazy hectic schedule?
Yes.
Okay.
So I do a lot of, I'll visit the DC office. I do a lot of client visits. I don't get to see every client anymore like I used to, but I've got my own portfolio of clients where I'm their executive sponsor.
Right.
And then, of course, speaking.
Right.
October will be a blur. That is National and International Cybersecurity Month. I usually do 4 to 5 speeches a week.
That's amazing.
That month.
Wow. Do you have an assistant that travels with you, or you're pretty self-sufficient?
I'm usually on my own, and Joan, who's my executive assistant, she is like the master controller of all things that are me. So she makes sure I know exactly down to the minute, that I also know the weather, bring your umbrella, and she makes sure that everything is sort of really kind of fine-tuned and orchestrated. And then from time to time I will travel with somebody on the team. A lot of times locally, Joan will be with me. Alyssa, who's been on my team, she likes to say she's both kind of my security and my kind of handler for certain things where we know I'm just going to get mobbed and I've got to be from point A to point B really quickly. And I don't like to say no. So then Alyssa gets to kind of come in and say, Theresa's got to keep moving. She's going to keep moving. But for the most part, I head out on my own, and I stick to a schedule.
Can you talk a little bit about, and I know we've got to stick to our schedule right now, your personal brand, because that's something we talk about a lot here on She's Her Own CEO is, it's so important to have your own career, your own basis, your own foundation, but then kind of taking that to the next level. And, a lot of the public conversation, build your brand, it gets a little trite and muddled, but is there anything that you've learned or, kind of that content focus to maintain that as you've become more of a public figure?
Yeah, that's, so there's a couple of things. I mean, my parents would always say, kind of the good you do for others, and sort of the how you behave and how you treat others when nobody else is looking. And so there's sort of like God's always watching, and if you do that, then you're going to find, even in the most frustrating moments, you're going to find those moments to be kind. I'll give you an example. Last night, trying to leave DC, it was 5 days in a row of lousy weather in DC, 5 days in a row of canceled flights. Can you imagine what the employees are going through? None of them want us to be stranded, but I'm watching people get angry and get flustered, and naturally so. I didn't know if I was going to make it back to Charlotte on time, and I thought, if I have to drive, it's going to be dangerous. And so I walked up and she said, how can I help you? And I said, first of all, I just want to acknowledge it's probably been a really rough 5 days for you here at work. And I learned that from my parents. And there's something about not how are you and you're not listening to the answer. There's something about genuinely connecting with people. And if that's your brand, talk about a legacy you're leaving behind after you leave the earth, right? What do you want people to say about you? And do you want to say they cared, they were kind? Now, I will tell you, another word used to describe me is relentless, and I am relentless about fighting cybercrime. But people would tell you, I care. But at the same time, if you're a cyber criminal, you're not going to like me. That's a good thing. One other topic, CBS's Hunted. Yes. You talk about that. How did you land on as a star of a hit TV show? Yeah, another God thing. I mean, it was literally one of those kind of calls out of the blue. So somebody we know in the industry, the producers for the show are Endemol Shine, and they kept asking people, do you know any females that do cybersecurity intel? They were having a pretty easy time finding females that do law enforcement. Couldn't find females, and they really wanted, CBS wanted a strong female figure running the intel and cyber in the command center. And so they kept hearing my name over and over again, but CBS wanted somebody who was former law enforcement or former military, which I am not. I'm married to it. I have people in my family. I support those cases, but I never personally was. So it took a long time for them to decide to send me to the interview. Basically, they said, is that all you have? And they said, well, there's this woman, but she didn't meet your criteria, but we love her. And so I got interviewed at the last minute and casted at the last minute for that role. So where does that stand now? Is it the next season is underway? Yes, we're kind of waiting. So Endemol Shine and CBS weren't able to reach agreement on the renewal. So Endemol Shine now has the opportunity to actually shop it out to other networks. And so we'll kind of see what happens next. We're based off of a UK show, and that's in its 4th year of filming. So we're hopeful.
And the time slot was doing great, I think. Or
yeah,
the show was
I mean,
doing
we had great
yeah.
reviews. It's just, it's politics.
Right, right. But in this reality show world, I mean, to bring that content and the real lifeness that's a little more above board and a little more intellectual, I think is a good thing, right?
Yeah, so we'll see
That's
where
great.
it goes. I'm hopeful maybe somebody else will pick it up.
Any final thoughts? Your mentors, your readings, podcasts you're listening to, things that make you right now?
Yeah,
Besides
sure.
traveling and...
Yeah, I mean, I go running every morning.
Yeah,
I had
that's
a rough
amazing.
time this week because the rain was so dangerous, like the thunderstorms and everything. So
Right.
yeah, I'm not a big fan of being in the gym. I like to be outside. So when I'm running, I try to go on long runs so I can use that for my prayer time and my reset time and thinking
Right.
about things. Staying, kind of faith-based, staying goal-centered.
Yeah.
So I've got my goals written down for outside work because you can get pretty consumed. And so I've sort of the system, it's, the faith, family, friends, and what are you fighting for?
Wow.
And I color code where I spend my time based on those things. And so that's helping. And then I would say as far as kind of current events go, obviously I'm watching election security.
Right.
I'm also watching sort of our kind of international trade and diplomacy negotiations because I can tell you those countries, when they don't like where things are going, they come after us. And I'm also watching sort of an explosion of cybercrime syndicates, so not state-sponsored, but cybercrime syndicates. They have the Equifax data. They've got, medical records.
Yeah.
They've got all kinds of information, the Yahoo hack, and they start putting these puzzle pieces together of our lives. And so unfortunately, they're really well armed, and we're having to sort of deal with that.
Mm-hmm. And I know on a recent segment you did here in Charlotte, you talked about some resources for people that are looking to protect their children and to kind of protect their home life. So any recommendations?
Yeah, sure. So we did a segment with National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which we do pro bono work for. And if you actually go to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they have a lot of resources there. We have resources that we send out every month that are both kind of personal and professional. So the way you sign up is bonus@fortalicesolutions.com, and our newsletter comes out once a month. We also, for the women and men watching that want more women in STEM, especially cybersecurity, we have a LinkedIn group called Help a Sister Up, and it'll take you a couple days. You just sort of say you want to join. We just make sure you're not a crazy person that's going to ruin the vibe that we've got going. And we encourage people, obviously you don't want your boss to know if you're looking for a job, but if you're doing a career transfer or you're unemployed, we encourage people to say, look, I'm looking for a job. We also encourage people to post jobs there. And it's just a really fun, safe space, very organic for men and women to talk about this issue.
Right. And Twitter handles one more time just for people. And I'll link all these things in the comments. But go ahead.
So @Tracker Payton for me, @Fortalice LLC for the company event account. We're on LinkedIn, Fortalice on LinkedIn, Theresa Payton on LinkedIn, Help a Sister Up as well on LinkedIn, Fortalice Solutions on Instagram, and we're also on Facebook as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Theresa. This has been
thanks
amazing.
for having me.
And if anybody has any comments, just put them in the comments bar, and we'll follow back up with Theresa. If it's anything for her, we'll direct it her way.
Absolutely.
And we'll put all the links up too. But thank you, Theresa.
Yeah,
Such a pleasure.
Really
You're
nice
beautiful
to see you
inside
again.
and out. And likewise, thank you.
Well. Good luck with everything.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be back in Charlotte soon. Bye.
Bye.